Hello, welcome to Self-Learning Podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Unit 3, City and Metropolis. In the previous two units, what is urban sociology and urban center, urbanization and urban growth, we learned about the origin and development of urban sociology as a branch of the discipline of sociology. We also became familiar with its subject matter, socio-historical background, and other concepts which form the body of this branch of sociology. The present unit explains the concept of city and the concept of metropolis. It will provide the general as well as sociological understanding of what constitutes a city and a metropolis. Let us first discuss concept of city. There are very few sociological terms on whose definition experts agree. The concept of city is no exception. In defining the city, we encounter numerous problems which are known to all sociologists. Mumford also mentions this fact in his article on city, forms and function in International Encyclopedia of Social Sciences. He writes, although the city as a form of human settlement dates back to the beginning of civilization, it long escaped scholarly scrutiny, and its very definition is still under debate. Levi-Strauss' attack on the ambiguity of totemism would apply equally to the term city, but with less justification, since the city has undergone many changes without losing its architectural and institutional continuity. Everybody seems to know what a city is, but no one has given a satisfactory definition. Since English lacks a neat vocabulary to distinguish the succession of urban forms from embryo to adult, their purity quantitative aspect is best rendered in German. Dorf, Kellenstein, Malesting, Grosslet, Millionaires. In English, Apolis, Polis, Metropolis, Megalopolis, and co-urbanization have been proposed as equivalent series with regional city and regional urban grid as possible emergent forms. Like many other sociological categories, the city is an abstraction, but the elements of which it consists, residents, structures, means of transportation, installations, and so on, are concrete entities of varying nature. What makes a city is a functional integration of its elements into a whole. Yet, a city has not merely a single function, but rather an assortment of many functions, and not all of them are present in every city. These may vary from city to city and time to time. There are different ways to define city, such as legal, statistical, density, occupation, sociological, and economical. Let us discuss all of them in detail one by one. The first one is definition on legal basis. The city in many countries has been defined in legal terms. A place is legally made a city by a declaration called a charter, which is granted by a higher authority. In India, state government has responsibility of granting municipal or civic status to a settlement or notifying it as a town. Such towns are known as statutory towns. The procedure is very clear, but the bases of identification are not uniform across the states and extremely unsatisfactory. It is an explanation ex post facto. A place is not a city because it has received a charter. The grant of charter is recognition that it has become a city. The definition disregards the fact that many eastern cities have never had a charter, and that in the West the legal distinction between the cities and the rural places evolved at a rather later date. The second one is statistical basis. Another equally simple approach is provided through statistical indicators. The US Bureau of Census considers as cities all incorporated places of 2,500 or more inhabitants. This method meets the needs of statisticians but offers little sociological insight. The arbitrariness of this kind of definition is revealed by the fact that the United States Census has had to alter its criteria from 8,000 inhabitants to 4,000 and finally to the present figure. To meet other difficulties, the census has had to include additional urban developments such as unincorporated towns or townships or political subdivisions. There are also substantial international variations. Most European countries follow the example set by France in 1846, requiring a minimum population of 2,000. This figure was approved by the International Bureau of Statistics in 1887. It has not been universally accepted, however, since Korea, for example, still sets the minimum limits as high as 44,000. In India, the cutoff point of non-statutory town is 5,000. According to the statistical definition noted above, a place having a certain number of persons will be known as city. It is obvious that a place does not become a city by merely reaching that figure. It is equally obvious that a place with that minimum number of persons and another one with over 1 million persons must have something in common. Besides having a certain number of inhabitants, if we have to justify our calling them both cities as distinct from rural settlements. The next point is basis of density of population. Another quantitative criteria for defining the city on is the basis of population density. Like the definition based on the number of persons, the definitions based on the density of population have also been questioned for similar reasons. It is impossible to state at what density a settlement changes from the rural to the urban type. Some villages are rather thickly settled, while some urban sections represent a residential vacuum. In Mumbai, more than 55% of slum population occupies only 6% of residential areas. These are the areas which are densely populated in Mumbai, whereas many sections of the city may have a density of less than 50% per acre. Same is the case in New Delhi. The city of the London has practically no inhabitants, and the borough of Richmond, which is a part of the New York City, has a much lower density than the Neolithic European pile dwellings, which possibly housed as many as 1,300 persons on less than 30,000 square yards. The density of cities varies from 10 Australia and New Zealand to 33 Paris per square hectare. For these regions, attempts to arrive at an exact minimum figure of density which signifies the urban character of a settlement are rarely made. Walter F. Cox tried to arrive at a numerical definition by investigating the density of Thompson County, New York. He proposes the following figures: density of less than 100 per square mile constitutes country, density from 100 to 1000 constitutes villages, and density above 1000 cities. His proposition was only tentative since he had analyzed only one American county. Wilcox himself realized conditions in other counties might be different, but if the density varies from area to area while cities maintain their character, the validity of the measurement would collapse, since a yardstick must not vary. Now the next point is basis of occupation. Not satisfied by the density criteria, Wilcox added the criteria of occupational structure in defining an urban center. According to his own definition, he regarded a district as rural only if presumably agriculture is the only occupation, while cities are placed in which there is practically no agriculture. He remarked the fundamental difference between the country and the city is the difference between agriculture and the group of other occupations. Now let us wind up the session and take rest. Thank you very much for engaging yourself with the Self-Learning podcast.